Ethan's woody perfume still lingered in the air when Claire found the note on the dining table. The firm and elegant handwriting announced the sentence she never expected to read. Claire, I'm sorry, but we can't continue anymore. I'm in love with someone else. Those words were like shards of glass piercing her soul. Claire felt her chest tighten as her eyes raced over the letter, searching for an explanation that made sense. But there was none. Just a cold and hasty goodbye, as if years of marriage could be erased with a simple pen. She let the paper slip through her fingers and looked around. The house, once so full of life, felt suffocating. The couch where they watched movies on cold nights. The kitchen where they prepared coffee together. Now everything was just a painful reminder that she had been replaced. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone and dialed Ethan's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. He didn't even have the decency to say it in person. Anger rose like fire in her veins. The sound of the fine rain tapping against the window echoed through the silent room, making everything even more melancholic. That's when a thought struck her. Who was this other woman? She didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, Claire went to the cafe where she used to meet Ethan after work. She wanted an explanation. Or maybe she just wanted to see with her own eyes that all of this was real. And then, there he was, sitting at the table near the window with a smile she no longer recognized. And in front of him, holding his hand as if it were something precious, was the last person Claire expected to see. Her best friend. The ground seemed to open beneath her feet. The air became heavy and her heart pounded so hard that she felt like she was going to faint. Betrayed. By her husband and by the friend who swore loyalty. She didn't know what to do. She just wanted to disappear. Then someone gently held her arm. Claire? She turned slowly and found a pair of familiar eyes, filled with surprise and concern. It was Logan, Ethan's older brother. And in that moment, without her knowing, everything was about to change. Claire blinked a few times, trying to focus on the face in front of her. Logan was staring at her with that serious expression, yet filled with empathy. Something rare for him. Always so reserved, always distant from the family's troubles. And now he was there, holding her arm as if he feared she would collapse at any moment. Claire? Are you okay? She opened her mouth to respond, but her voice simply wouldn't come out. How could she be okay? Her husband was sitting just a few meters away, holding the hand of the woman Claire trusted like a sister. The scene felt like a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up. Logan followed her gaze and realized what was happening. His jaw clenched, and a cold glint crossed his eyes. He had never had a good relationship with Ethan, quite the opposite. While Ethan had always been the family's favorite son, the perfect husband, and the brilliant businessman, Logan had followed his own path, away from the spotlight and expectations. Come with me, he said, his voice low, almost an order. Claire hesitated. Part of her wanted to march over to that table and scream, demand answers, make Ethan look her in the eyes and admit what he had done. But the other part, the part that was still trembling inside, just wanted to escape. And Logan seemed willing to offer exactly that. Before she could rationalize, she felt her feet moving, following him out of the cafe. The cold autumn air hit her face as they crossed the door, and Claire finally managed to take a deep breath. Take me home, she murmured, her voice finally returning. Logan nodded and unlocked his car with a click. The sleek black vehicle suited him perfectly, discreet, firm, reliable. Claire slid into the passenger seat without saying anything more. Silence accompanied them for the first few minutes of the drive. Logan kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. He had never been one to talk much, and Claire always saw him as someone distant, almost cold. But at that moment, his presence felt like the only thing keeping her upright. You didn't need to get me out of there, she finally said, breaking the silence. I did. You didn't deserve to go through that. Claire turned her gaze to the window, watching the city lights blur by. She felt a knot in her throat. Why did Logan seem more concerned for her than her own husband? Did you know? She asked softly. Logan sighed. I suspected. Ethan has always been good at hiding secrets, but lately, something seemed off. Claire closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back tears. So it wasn't just in her head. She had really been deceived. What do I do now? Her voice came out fragile, as if she were speaking more to herself than to him. Logan remained silent for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was firm and steady. You start over. Claire looked at him, and for the first time that night, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The car smoothly slid to a stop in front of the house that Claire shared with Ethan, or at least had shared until a few hours ago. The lights were off, the facade silent, as if the home itself knew that something had changed. Claire hesitated before getting out of the car. Her hands trembled in her lap, and the idea of entering that house, now empty of everything that once meant safety, felt unbearable. Do you want me to come in with you? Logan asked, not taking his eyes off her. The unexpected offer took her by surprise. Logan wasn't the type to get involved in family dramas, much less in hers. But there he was, showing concern, being different. You don't have to, she murmured, although a part of her wished to say the opposite. He nodded slowly, but made no move to turn the car back on. He just sat there, waiting, as if he knew she would need time. Claire took a deep breath and got out. The keys felt heavier in her hand as she unlocked the door and pushed it open. The familiar smell of the environment hit her face, mixed with the oppressive silence. There it all was. The couch with the blue blanket she always pulled out on cold days, the table with the wine glass marks from their dinners for two. And at the same time, it felt like nothing was hers anymore. Her eyes went straight to the living room closet. With a lump in her throat, she walked over and opened the doors. Her clothes were still there. Ethan's shirts, which used to be mixed with hers, had disappeared. He had already taken his things. The confirmation made her stomach churn. He not only left her, but he planned it. He packed everything, chose the moment, ensured he left the scene without giving her a chance to fight. Claire squeezed her eyes shut, trying to hold back the tears. But it was useless. A single hot tear rolled down her cheek, followed by another. A light knock on the door brought her back to reality. She turned around and, to her surprise, saw Logan standing in the doorway. I said you didn't have to come in. She tried to joke, her voice choked. He shrugged. I thought maybe you would change your mind. She let out a quiet, humorless laugh and wiped her face. Logan, why are you being so nice to me? He was silent for a moment, as if choosing the right words. Then he stepped forward, crossing the threshold of the door. Because someone needs to be. The simple yet meaningful words made something inside Claire warm for the first time that night. And for the first time since Ethan left, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. The clock read almost 9 o'clock when Claire finally allowed herself to sit on the couch. The day had been a whirlwind of emotions, and now, with the house silent around her, the weight of loneliness felt even heavier. She hugged her knees and closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm her heart. But then the sound of dishes being stirred in the kitchen made her open her eyes suddenly. She stood up, confused. Logan? There he was, in her kitchen, absently stirring something in a pot on the stove. He had taken off his jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, revealing strong forearms. The scene felt so out of place that Claire took a second to believe what she was seeing. He looked up and gave a half smile. You didn't have dinner. And you came into my kitchen and decided to cook? She crossed her arms, trying to look indignant, but deep down, it was strange how his presence seemed to make the house feel less empty. You looked like you needed food and company, he said, shrugging. She blinked, surprised. Logan had always been a mystery to her. Unlike Ethan, who was charismatic and always knew what to say, Logan was reserved, observant. He gave the impression that he was always about to leave. But now, there he was, making dinner as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Claire sighed and leaned against the counter. You know you don't have to do this, right? I know. But I'm doing it. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Have you always been like this? He raised an eyebrow. Like what? Someone who helps without asking for anything in return. Logan watched her for a moment, then turned his attention back to the pot. Maybe you never paid attention before? The words caught her off guard. Before she could respond, he turned off the heat and served the food onto 2 plates. Let's eat. You need to regain your strength. Claire picked up a fork and took her first bite. To her surprise, it was delicious. She looked at him, impressed. "Since when do you know how to cook?" "Since I learned that no one does it for me." There was something in the way he said that made Claire feel a tightness in her chest. Logan had always been the distant brother, the one who didn't seem to fit in the family. Now she was starting to realize that there was much more to him than she had imagined. They ate in silence for a few minutes until Claire finally said, "Thank you, Logan." He looked at her and for the first time that night gave a genuine smile. "You're welcome, Claire." And in that moment, she realized that maybe Logan's presence wasn't just a temporary comfort. Maybe it was exactly what she needed. The soft morning light filled the room when Claire opened her eyes. She blinked a few times, trying to remember the exact moment she had fallen asleep there on the couch. The last thing she remembered was Logan's calm voice and the cozy smell of the food he had prepared. For a moment, everything seemed normal, as if Ethan had never left, as if the betrayal had never happened. But then, reality hit her like a punch to the chest. She sat up slowly, feeling the muscle soreness from the discomfort of the couch. Her gaze wandered around the room until it landed on Logan, asleep in the armchair next to her, his head resting on his hand and his feet stretched out. Claire held her breath. He stayed there all night? Something inside her warmed with that realization. He could have left after dinner. He could have gone on with his life. But he stayed. As if feeling her gaze, Logan stirred and opened his eyes slowly. His eyes met hers, still half asleep. "Good morning," he murmured, rubbing his face. "Good morning," she replied hesitantly. You, slept there?" He shrugged. "I thought you didn't want to be alone." Claire looked away, feeling a lump in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. A comfortable silence settled between them. Claire didn't know how to thank Logan for everything he was doing, but she knew it meant more than words could express. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the weight in her chest. "I need to do something. I can't spend the day here wallowing. What do you have in mind?" She hesitated. She never imagined having to start over from scratch. Her life was planned alongside Ethan. Now she was just Claire. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. "I need a job, something to help me move forward." Logan nodded, as if he had been expecting that answer. "If you need help, I know some people." Claire smiled, surprised. "Would you do that?" He looked her in the eyes. "Of course." For a brief moment, she wondered what Ethan would think if he knew his own brother was there, by her side, helping her to get back on her feet. But for the first time since everything fell apart, she realized it didn't matter. She didn't need to think about Ethan anymore. She just needed to think about herself. And maybe, just maybe, about Logan too. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the kitchen as Claire sat at the table, holding the warm cup between her hands. The comforting heat contrasted with the storm that still raged inside her. Logan was beside her, absent-mindedly flipping through some pages on his phone. Since last night, he had stayed there in no hurry to leave, as if he knew she needed his presence, even in silence. "So?" He broke the silence, sliding the phone in her direction. "I took a look and found some job openings." Claire raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You did that?" "I said I would help, didn't I?" She took the phone and started scrolling through the screen. Some openings were for receptionist positions, others for administrative assistant roles, and even one at a small bookstore downtown. "What do you think?" Logan asked, watching her. Claire bit her lip. When was the last time she looked for a job? Since she married Ethan, she had dedicated herself to the house and her life with him. She never worried about building something of her own. And now, here she was. "I like the idea of working at a bookstore," she murmured, surprised by her own confession. "So why don't you give it a try?" She took a deep breath. "Because I'm terrified." Logan tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Of what?" She let out a humorless laugh and gestured around. "Of all this. Of starting over. Of failing." He was silent for a moment, then rested his elbows on the table, leaning in a little closer. "Claire, you've already been through the worst. You've survived that. Now, you just need to take the first step." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the world seemed calmer. Maybe he was right. She took the phone back and opened the email from the bookstore. "Okay," she said, determined. "I'll try." Logan smiled faintly, satisfied. Good, because I've already scheduled an interview for you this afternoon. Claire's eyes widened. What? He shrugged, picking up his coffee cup. I thought you might need a little nudge. She should have been angry, she should have been outraged. But instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Logan was watching her with that calm, steady gaze. And suddenly, Claire realized that maybe he wasn't just someone to help her get up. Maybe he was someone she could walk forward with. The little bell of the bookstore chimed softly as Claire pushed open the glass door. The place was cozy, with dark wooden shelves, a light aroma of coffee and old books in the air. For a moment, she felt transported to another world, one where her life still made sense. But soon, reality came crashing back. She was there for an interview, an important step. Her first real step since Ethan left her. Claire Thompson? A gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find a woman in her 50s, gray hair tied in a messy bun and kind eyes behind reading glasses. That's me, Claire replied, trying to sound confident. I'm Margaret, the owner of the bookstore. It's a pleasure to meet you. Let's go to the office. Claire followed her down the narrow hallway in the back, trying to control her breathing. She needed this job. She needed something of her own. The interview started off light. Margaret asked about her background, her organizational skills, if she liked to read. Claire answered honestly, explaining that she had no formal experience but had always been passionate about books. Margaret smiled. Knowing how to sell books is one thing, but loving them? That's not something you can teach. Claire relaxed a little. Maybe she had a chance. You seem like a smart woman, Claire. And if I may say, you seem like someone trying to start over. Claire looked away, unsure of how to respond. I know that look, Margaret continued with an understanding smile. I've been in that place before. Those words touched something inside Claire. For the first time, she felt like she was talking to someone who really understood. Margaret stood up and extended her hand. The job is yours. Claire blinked, surprised. Really? That easy? The woman laughed. Sometimes the best things in life don't have to be so complicated. Claire shook her hand, feeling genuine relief. When she left the bookstore, her heart was racing. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was excitement. And then, as she crossed the street, she saw Logan leaning against his car, arms crossed, as if he already knew the outcome before even asking. She walked up to him, trying to hold back her smile. So? He asked. She took a deep breath and then let out a small laugh. I got it. Logan just nodded, the corner of his lips curling up. I knew you would. Claire felt something warm inside her chest. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that the future could be good again. The smell of rain still lingered in the air when Claire and Logan left the bookstore. The cobblestone streets reflected the soft lights of the city, and for a moment, Claire felt as if she were in a scene from a book she would love to read herself. She got the job, her first step toward a new beginning. And somehow, Logan was there with her, a silent constant, supporting her without needing to say much. Where to now? He asked, opening the car door for her. She hesitated, looking at him. Actually, I wanted to thank you. Logan raised an eyebrow. For what? For all of this. For helping me get back up when I didn't think I could. He shrugged, as if what he was doing wasn't a big deal. But to Claire, it was. So let me treat you to dinner. Logan looked at her for a moment, as if weighing whether to accept or not. A thank you dinner? He asked, a small smile playing on his lips. Exactly. And what if I say you don't need to thank me? She crossed her arms. Still, you'll accept. Logan let out a light laugh and shook his head. All right, Claire, you win. The restaurant was small, with warm yellow lights and a cozy atmosphere. Claire felt different there. Lighter. She and Logan ordered their dishes, and for the first time in a long time, Claire felt she could breathe without the weight of the past pulling her back. Did you always like bookstores? Logan asked, taking a sip of his whiskey. Claire smiled. Always, since I was little. My dad used to take me to one every Saturday. I would spend hours picking out a new book. And why didn't you work in that field before? She looked away, fiddling with the edge of her glass. Because I built my life around Ethan. There was no room for my dreams. Logan fell silent for a moment, his eyes analyzing every detail of her face. And now? She raised her eyes to him. Now I want to learn to build something of my own. Logan's gaze softened, and Claire felt something different in that moment. Something warm, intense. And then, unexpectedly, he held her hand across the table. It was a simple touch, but it changed everything. Her heart raced and she felt a shiver run up her skin. They looked at each other for a long moment. Neither of them said anything, but somehow everything was said in that silence. Claire knew right then that something between them had changed, and there was no going back. Claire still felt the warmth of Logan's hand on hers when the waiter arrived with their dishes, breaking the moment that felt suspended in the air. She slowly pulled her hand back, trying to mask the confusion within her. Logan, on the other hand, seemed calm, as if nothing had happened. Or maybe, as if he were waiting for the right moment for this to happen. They talked about light topics during dinner, books, travel, even some funny childhood stories. But with every exchanged glance, Claire felt the weight of what went unsaid. Something between them was different, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. When they finished, Logan paid the bill before Claire could protest. "Hey, dinner was on me," she complained, crossing her arms. He just smiled to the side. "Consider this a thank you for getting the job." She rolled her eyes but couldn't help but smile. They both left the restaurant, and the cold night air made Claire huddle a bit in her coat. Logan noticed and, without saying anything, took off his own coat and placed it over her shoulders. The gesture was simple, but it warmed her more than the fabric itself. She looked at him, surprised. "Logan, let's go," he said softly, gesturing to the car. On the way back, the silence between them was different. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with something Claire couldn't explain. When they reached her house, Claire hesitated before getting out of the car. She turned to him, wanting to say something, but not knowing exactly what. "Thank you for today," she finally said. Logan nodded, his gaze fixed on hers. "Good night, Claire." She took a deep breath and got out of the car, entering her house before she did something impulsive. But as she leaned against the closed door, she felt her heart racing in her chest. Logan was a problem. And the worst part? She didn't want to run away from him. The night was quiet, but inside Claire, everything was chaos. She threw herself onto the couch, trying to ignore the persistent feeling of Logan's touch, the intense look he had given her before they said goodbye. She couldn't feel this way. Not for him. He was Ethan's brother. The thought made her stomach churn. Why, of all the people in the world, was Logan the one there for her? The one who made her feel safe, valued, and, most dangerously of all, alive? She shook her head, trying to push away the confusing emotions. Maybe she was just lonely. Maybe she was just grateful. That didn't mean she felt anything real. But deep down, she knew she was lying to herself. The next morning, Claire woke up to the insistent sound of knocking on the door. Still sleepy, she pulled on her robe and went to answer. When she opened it, she froze. Ethan? Her ex-husband was standing there, just as impeccable as ever, wearing a sharp suit and the same woody cologne that used to make her sigh. Now, it only brought back bad memories. He smiled as if nothing had happened. "Claire, can we talk?" Anger rose like fire in her veins. "You have the nerve to come here after what you did?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake." She laughed humorlessly. "Oh, that's nothing compared to what you did." "Claire, I miss you." Her chest tightened, but not in the way she expected. Before, hearing that would have made her crumble. Now, it felt only empty. Before she could respond, a black car stopped in front of the house. Logan. He got out slowly, his eyes immediately locking onto Ethan's. The tension in the air became almost palpable. "What are you doing here?" Logan asked bluntly. Ethan crossed his arms. "That's none of your business. It's a matter between me and Claire." Claire felt her whole body stiffen. It was as if she were caught between two worlds, the past and the present. Logan's gaze softened when he turned to her. "Do you want him to leave?" His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous behind it. Something Claire had never heard before. And then, as if a light bulb finally went off, Claire realized the truth. She no longer wanted Ethan there. She wanted Logan. She took a deep breath, gathering all her strength, and looked directly at Ethan. "Yes, I want you to leave." Ethan blinked, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. But Logan didn't seem surprised. After all, he knew. He had always known. Ethan opened and closed his mouth a few times, as if trying to find the right words. But there were no words that could erase what he had done. "Claire." He stepped forward, but Logan immediately positioned himself in the way. "You heard what she said." Logan's voice was low but firm. Ethan glared at him, his eyes darkening. "Since when did you become her protector, Logan? Since you decided to throw her away like she was nothing." The tension between the brothers was almost suffocating. Claire felt her heart race. She didn't want to fight. She didn't want any more drama. All she wanted was to move on. She took a deep breath and looked directly at Ethan. "You made your choice. Now, I'm making mine." Ethan laughed humorlessly. "And your choice is him? My brother?" Claire froze for a second. She still didn't know how to respond to that. Logan was there for her, yes. He helped her get back on her feet, stood by her when she needed it most. But did that mean she was ready for something more? Before she could answer, Logan spoke first. "This isn't about me, Ethan. It's about her. And you need to respect that." Ethan ran a hand over his face, frustrated. "This is unbelievable." Claire crossed her arms, her voice finally firm. "What's unbelievable, Ethan, is you thinking you can betray me and then just come back, expecting everything to be okay." He blinked, as if just now realizing what was really happening. "So, it's really over?" Claire felt a lump in her throat, but she didn't hesitate. "It's over." Ethan stood there for a few more seconds, as if waiting for her to change her mind. But Claire remained resolute. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh, ran a hand through his hair, and stepped back. "Fine. It's your choice." Without saying anything more, he turned and got into the car, speeding down the street without looking back. Claire felt her legs tremble and let out a long sigh. It was over. She knew this moment would come, but she hadn't imagined it would feel so liberating. Suddenly, she felt a presence beside her. Logan said nothing, just stood there, respecting her space. She turned to him, still trying to sort through her feelings. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. Logan watched her for a moment before responding. "Always." And for the first time, Claire began to wonder if, maybe, he was the right choice all along. The silence between Claire and Logan lasted a few seconds after Ethan left. The cold afternoon wind blew gently, making her hair sway. Now that everything was resolved, now that Ethan truly belonged to the past, why was her heart still racing? She looked up at Logan. He was standing there watching her with that calm, intense look, as if he were waiting for her to process everything in her own time. And that was exactly what made her nervous. "Well, I guess that was easier than I expected," she tried to joke, crossing her arms. "You think?" Logan raised an eyebrow. "Okay, maybe it was slightly scary," she admitted, biting her lip. He let out a small smile, but didn't respond. Claire realized that Logan always did this. He spoke little, but his presence said everything. And suddenly, she became aware of how close he was. She could smell the woody scent of his cologne, noticed how the late afternoon light cast soft shadows on his face. Why had she never truly noticed Logan before? Maybe because she had always been too busy trying to maintain her marriage with Ethan, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for her. Now, without Ethan, without distractions, Logan was there, and there was nothing stopping her from seeing him. Her heart raced with that realization. She took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "Logan?" she started hesitantly. He looked her in the eyes, waiting. But the words disappeared. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to thank him for everything, but that felt inadequate. She wanted to say that she felt safe beside him, that she liked how he made her laugh effortlessly, that his presence was something that was beginning to mean more than it should. But before she could find a way to express all of this, Logan stepped forward. And for the first time, Claire didn't step back. Her heart beat so loudly that she was sure he could hear it. "Claire," Logan murmured, his voice low, almost hesitant. She held her breath. Was he going to kiss her? And did she want him to kiss her? But before anything could happen, the sound of a car parking on the street made them pull away. Claire instinctively looked to the side and saw a familiar figure getting out of the vehicle. Margaret, her new boss from the bookstore. She smiled upon seeing her, but still felt her body on alert from what had just happened between her and Logan. Or what had almost happened. Margaret approached with her usual friendly demeanor. "Claire, I'm so glad I found you. I was going to call you, but since I'm nearby, can we talk for a moment?" Claire shot a quick glance at Logan, as if trying to hold herself together in his presence. He just nodded slightly as if to say, "Go ahead." She swallowed hard and turned to Margaret. "Sure." But as she stepped away, one thing was clear to her. Logan almost kissed her. And the worst part? She wanted him to. Claire followed Margaret to the small wooden bench in front of the house. The air was still charged with the electricity of the moment that almost happened between her and Logan, and her mind was racing. She wanted that kiss. But what did that mean? Claire? Margaret called her attention, smiling slightly. She blinked a few times, trying to focus. "Oh, sorry. What did you say?" The woman laughed. "It seems your head is somewhere else." "You have no idea where," Claire thought, feeling her face heat up. "I just wanted to invite you to an event we're having at the bookstore tomorrow night," Margaret continued. "A cocktail to showcase new books and bring together some people from the town. It's something simple, but I thought it would be a good opportunity for you to get to know the people better." Claire smiled, relieved. "That sounds great. I'd love to." Margaret nodded. "Perfect. Oh, and feel free to bring someone." Claire just smiled, not thinking much about the suggestion. But as soon as Margaret said goodbye and left, the idea kept hammering in her head. Bring someone. Her first thought was Logan, and that was a problem. Because if she was already confused about what she felt, being next to him at a social event, in a cozy and relaxed environment, might make everything even more complicated. She sighed, running her hands over her face. But before she could think further, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and found Logan leaning against the doorframe, watching her with that analytical gaze that made her uneasy. What did Margaret want to talk about? Oh. Claire cleared her throat, trying to sound natural. "An event at the bookstore tomorrow. She invited me." Logan nodded, crossing his arms. "And are you going?" "Yes." He fell silent for a moment, then casually asked, "Are you bringing someone?" Claire swallowed hard. She should say no, that it was just a work event, nothing important. But instead, she heard her own voice respond. "Do you want to go with me?" The words slipped out before she could think twice. Logan looked at her for a moment, and then a small smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "I'd love to." And at that moment, Claire knew she was stepping into something from which there would be no turning back. Claire's navy blue dress slid smoothly against her skin as she looked at herself in the mirror. She couldn't remember the last time she got ready like this, not just for an event, but to feel good about herself. But if she was honest, part of her also wanted to impress him. Since the moment Logan accepted her invitation, Claire felt a different kind of anxiety growing inside her. She didn't know what it was between them, but she knew it was strong. And now, about to leave for the event, her heart was pounding in her chest. The sound of the doorbell made Claire take a deep breath before opening the door. And there was Logan. He wore a dark suit, the tie slightly loosened at the collar, as if he wanted to keep his naturally carefree air. But what made Claire hold her breath was the way he looked at her. He didn't say anything right away. He just let his gaze roam over every detail of her, from her loose hair to the elegant dress. "You look beautiful," he finally said, his voice hoarse and low. Heat rushed up Claire's neck. "Thank you," she murmured. For a moment, they stood there, frozen on the doorstep, as if neither of them wanted to break that moment. But then Logan extended his arm to her. "Shall we?" Claire smiled and linked her arm with his, feeling the warm touch of his skin. And at that moment, she was sure of one thing. This night would change everything. The bookstore was immaculate, Tiny golden lights hung from the ceiling, reflecting off the shelves filled with books. A cocktail table was set up in the corner, where some people were already serving themselves glasses of wine and small portions of cheese. Claire felt a flutter in her stomach. Not because of the event itself, but because, beside her, Logan seemed completely at ease. As if he belonged in that place next to her. Margaret soon approached, smiling. "Claire, I'm so glad you came. And with company." She looked at Logan and extended her hand. "I'm Margaret, the owner of the bookstore." Logan shook her hand with a polite smile. "Logan Carter." Margaret raised an eyebrow, curious. "Carter? Any relation to Ethan Carter?" Claire held her breath, but Logan didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm his brother." Margaret blinked, surprised. "Well, that's interesting." Claire laughed awkwardly, trying to change the subject. "How can I help?" Margaret blinked, as if coming out of a daydream. "Oh, right. I need someone at the counter to organize the book orders. Do you mind?" "Not at all." Claire turned to Logan. "Are you okay on your own?" He smiled slightly. "I'll take a look at the books. Maybe I'll find something interesting." She nodded and went to the counter, trying to ignore how her heart was still racing. But as the night went on, she noticed something curious. Every time she looked out into the room, Logan was watching her, and each time their eyes met, Claire felt like she was about to cross an invisible line from which there would be no turning back. The night went on at a steady pace. Claire kept busy at the counter, taking orders, chatting with customers, and helping Margaret with small details. But every moment she felt Logan's gaze on her. And whenever she spotted him across the hall, he seemed relaxed, leaning against a shelf of books, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching her as if she were the only person there. The heat rose in Claire's body every time this happened. She tried to ignore it. She tried to pretend it was just the gratitude she felt for him, that what existed between them was nothing more than a bond formed after Ethan's betrayal. But deep down, she knew. This was much more than gratitude. And then, as the event began to wind down and the lights grew softer, Claire noticed Logan standing at the bookstore door, looking at her with a half smile. He didn't need to say anything. She knew he was waiting for her. Her heart raced. Claire glanced around, seeing that Margaret was already wrapping up the last details. "Margaret, can I go?" The woman smiled. "Of course, dear. You worked hard today." Claire nodded and took off her apron, feeling the adrenaline rush through her body. She crossed the bookstore toward Logan, as if being pulled by something invisible. When she got close to him, he simply tilted his head slightly. "Shall we?" She swallowed hard and nodded. The two stepped out together into the quiet street, where the cold night air made Claire shiver slightly. Logan noticed and, without hesitation, draped his coat over her shoulders, just as he had done before. This time, Claire didn't try to refuse. They walked in silence for a few minutes until they reached Logan's car. He opened the passenger door for her, but Claire didn't get in. She stood there, frozen, feeling her heart hammer against her chest. She felt his gaze on her, felt the electricity in the air, felt that they were one step away from something inevitable. And then, before she could convince herself otherwise, she spoke. "Logan, what are we doing?" He didn't pretend not to understand. He simply stepped closer, closing the distance between them even more. "I don't know about you, Claire." His voice was low, hoarse. "But I've been trying not to kiss you since the moment Ethan left." Claire held her breath. The cold of the night contrasted with the warmth rising in her body. Her eyes fell to his lips, then back to those deep eyes that seemed to read all her secrets. She knew that crossing that line would change everything. But the truth? She had crossed it a long time ago. And then, before she could think, before she could stop herself, she rose on her toes and kissed him. The moment their lips met, everything around them disappeared. The cold of the night, the fear, the doubts. Nothing else existed. Just him. The kiss started hesitantly, as if they were both still trying to understand what they were doing, but soon the hesitation faded. Logan wrapped his arms around Claire's waist, pulling her closer, and she surrendered without resistance. Her heart raced so fast she was sure Logan could feel it. And in that instant, Claire knew. She had never been kissed like that before. She had never been desired in that way. His fingers glided softly along her neck, intensifying the kiss in a way that made Claire lose herself completely. She clutched his shirt, feeling the warmth of his body, wanting to hold on to something that kept her steady because her mind was spinning. Was it wrong? But for the first time in a long time, Claire didn't want to think. She wanted to feel. And Logan made her feel everything. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Claire kept her eyes closed for a second, trying to catch her breath, trying to understand what had just happened. Logan rested his forehead against hers and smiled softly. "I've wanted to do this for a long time," he admitted, his voice hoarse. She opened her eyes and found his, intense, sincere. "Me too." The confession slipped out before she could hold it back. Logan gently traced her face with his thumb, as if he wanted to memorize every detail. "So, what happens now?" he asked. Claire bit her lip, feeling the weight of that question. What happened now? She knew there was no turning back. Being with Logan meant facing everything, the judgment, the past, Ethan. But for the first time, none of that mattered, because Logan was by her side, and she wanted him to be. She smiled slightly. "Now, we see where this goes." Logan smiled back, and in that moment, Claire knew that regardless of what happened, she was no longer alone. She had a new beginning. And maybe, just maybe, she had found a new love. Did you enjoy the story? What would you do in Claire's place? Leave your comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories.